Starting us off in at number 10, Big Barda. Let's begin our list with a comical romp of a relationship between Superman and Big Barda. In Action Comics issue 593, Superman was almost in a porno with Barda. Not even joking. The story in the issue, titled The Suicide Snare, begins with Darkseid sitting in his living room with a stiff drink, informing Mr. Miracle and Oberon that Big Barda has been up to no good. He then shows them a tape, which we never see play on panel, of her starring in an adult film, pleasuring Darkseid's old lackey, Sleaze. Of course, fitting name. Meanwhile, Sleaze takes a mind-controlled Barda and Superman to an adult film director named Grossman to make a porno starring the two heroes. Sleaze wants to use the film to make money so he can buy an army to get revenge on his former boss. Mr. Miracle ends up walking in on the shoot, encountering Grossman telling Superman that he has the sex appeal of a side of beef. Ouch. That's definitely gotta hurt the ego. But I mean, if you're the Man of Steel, like, can your ego really take a hit like that? You can just brush that shit off. In at number 9, Lila Laurel. In Superman issue 141 from 1960, Superman ends up flying through a time barrier, letting himself in a year sometime before Krypton exploded. How this whole experience wasn't more traumatizing for him is beyond us, although Silver Age, so… Anywho, he begins to lose his powers and finds himself trapped on the planet. And when he's wandering around, he discovers a spaceship. Turns out this ship is actually part of a movie set of a sci-fi film being produced by a Kryptonian production company. He walks onto the set, ends up in the film, and meets an actress named Lila Laurel, one of Krypton's most famous movie starlets. They end up popping some pills together and then find themselves in a place called Rainbow Canyon, declaring their love for one another. Oh, drugs. Eventually his powers are restored and he goes back to Earth, but later Lila would return in a story penned by Alan Moore in 1985 titled For the Man Who Has Everything, which saw Clark getting a dream machine plant as a gift, which granted one's deepest desires. And Superman's deepest desire? Well, to be a normal Kryptonian, living with his wife Layla and their son. It's kind of heartbreaking. Moving on to another woman with the initials LL, in at number 8, Lori Lamaris. Remember that time Superman hooked up with a mermaid? Yeah, that is an actual thing that happened. This one is a product of a 1959 issue of Superman, number 129, in a story titled The Girl in Superman's Past. Lori and Clark had met each other in college and the two had ended up in a relationship. It's also worth noting that Lori is in a wheelchair. When Lori tells him that she needs to return home and tries to break things off, Clark decides he wants to marry her and abandon being Superman for her. He ends up at her apartment where he sees that instead of a bed, she's got a tank of salt water. Therefore, she must be a mermaid. And he's actually right. Looks like that blanket that she was wheeling around with is hiding more than just legs. It's a whole f***ing mermaid fin. Imagine dating someone and they're like, surprise, I'm a mermaid. Oh. Borderline bestiality. Lori is actually from Atlantis, and the whole story was just a justification as to why Superman would not propose to Lois Lane. Also, I personally can't get over how fancy Lori's little shirt is that she wears while being a mermaid underwater. Very prude for a mermaid, isn't it? Although it was the 50s, so… She's just like committed to high fashion, swimming around in the water, doesn't care if it gets all dirty with the salt and debris. Moving on to number 7, Supergirl. Supergirl and Superman have a bit of a weird history together during the Silver Age, and despite being related, have been paired together romantically a handful of times, usually in one-off stories that turn out to have no real consequence. For example, this went down in Superman's girlfriend Lois Lane, issue 55, a product of Otto Binders, who was notorious in the Silver Age for putting the Man of Steel in some pretty ridiculous scenarios. In this issue, we see Superman's teenage cousin appear to be married to her hunky relative. And even better, they've had 2 children. Luckily, this was not incest. Turns out red kryptonite was the real culprit here, with it having driven Supergirl insane. While insane, she decided that she wanted to screw with Lois Lane by deceiving her into thinking that she had lost Superman for good. Supergirl had also managed to hypnotize Superman so that he'd go along with it. And those super babies flying around? They're robots, because of course. This isn't the only time that Supergirl got kinda weird. We've got another instance coming up later on our list. But for now, in at number 6, Superwoman. This Superwoman is a Lois Lane alternate who hails from Earth 3, and played a substantial role in the Forever Evil crossover. Technically, she is an amalgamation of both Lois and Wonder Woman, serving in the Wonder Woman role on the Crime Syndicate team. She and Ultraman are a couple, and she is pregnant with his child. Now for context, Ultraman, the Superman alternate from this Earth, is a complete a-hole, and his upbringing didn't help. Rather than the supportive and loving Kent, this version of of his adopted parents were junkies, and he does not care for Superwoman at all. The only reason why he's with her is because she's the only one on this world capable of carrying his child. But joke is on Ultraman, because the unborn child is like a chess piece for Superwoman, who uses it to manipulate others, including Owlman, who she tells is the baby's father. Turns out the real dad though is Alexander Luthor, who is that world's Shazam, and the only hero from Earth 3. Regardless, she has slept around quite a bit, considering she was able to convince 3 separate men, including Superman/Ultraman of Earth 3, that their baby was theirs. Yikes. Oh. Moving on to number 5, the Female Furies. Taking a break from the comics and looking at the Superman animated series, let's look at an episode titled Legacy, or rather a 2-parter episode called Legacy that acted as the series finale. In it, Darkseid brainwashes Superman into believing that he was raised on Apokolips as his adoptive son rather than the Kent's adoptive son on Earth. He does this as a means of using the Man of Steel to conquer the universe for him. But when Superman makes his way to Earth to take it for his daddy dearest, his memories start to come back and conflict ensues. Now during his brainwash period, Kal-El gets to experience the perks of being the son of the ruler of Apokolips, which just so happens to be hooking up with these 3 ladies known as the Female Furies. They consist of Lashina, a sexually charged BDSM new god of Apokolips, Stompa, who seems to have a foot fetish, and Mad Harriet, who is an insane Wolverine-esque killing machine. And it's implied that they had a foursome with the Man of Steel. Darkseid even tells him to, I quote, "enjoy the fruits of your labor." Yeah. Little weird there for your adoptive dad to be like, go on, have sex with my lackeys, ugh. Just strange dynamic. Maybe things on Apokolips are different, I don't know. In at number 4, Lola La. It's a case of those double L's again. Lola La is the dollar store version of She-Hulk, but with a flower bikini who doesn't speak English or a language that Superman understands. But she is the princess of a dinosaur island, so Superman decided that they should get hitched, and that he should alter his costume so that he never had to wear a shirt. Okay. This occurred in the 1991 Blackout Saga, in Volume 2 of Superman in issue 62. Now at the time, he was missing from Metropolis and the city was suffering from a power outage. Lois Lane manages to find him on this island right before Superman can tie the knot with Lola La. God, that name. Lois interferes and her and the She-Hulk wannabe get into a fight where their primary combat strategies involve pulling each other's hair. Yes, because that's how women fight, right? And what does the Man of Steel do? Well, he just watches them brawl. He considers breaking it up and then he just decides that he doesn't want to. That headband though. Moving on to number 3, Maxima. Maxima is technically a supervillain, but considering Superman has a thing for mortal Earth ladies, and we have 10 spots on our list, we're gonna just let that whole evil thing slide for this number. Besides, she ends up becoming good later anyway, joining up with the Justice League. Maxima was introduced in 1989's Action Comics issue 645. Hailing from the alien planet of Almerac, she came to Earth in search of a suitable mate, and set her sights on Superman, who was genetically compatible with her. She could give him children, something that, at the time, no Earth woman was capable of doing. That's actually like a common theme in mates for Superman that are not Lois Lane or Wonder Woman. Although technically Wonder Woman could totally birth his children. Despite this, Superman rejected her offer. The two would hook up though in The Adventures of Superman Annual 3 Volume 1 in 1991 in an Elseworlds story in which Lois Lane dies from carrying Superman's child, who literally kicks her to death from the womb out. Maxima becomes the perfect rebound for him and the two fall in love. In the main continuity though, Maxima these days isn't really interested in the Man of Steel, opting out for a Woman of Steel instead. More recently in the New 52, she was revealed to be gay, bonding with Supergirl after they met in Supergirl issue 36. She even develops feelings for her, and reveals that she was forced to leave her homeworld because her culture demanded that she find a heterosexual partner to mate with, which is a pretty good way to revise a hero whose whole shtick has literally been about trying to procreate with Superman. Very two-dimensional. But now she's a character who is more three-dimensional and gay. And number 2, Luma Line. Luma Line was introduced in 1962's Action Comics issue 289 in a story titled Superman's Super Courtship, and it was under weird circumstances. This is the whole Supergirl thing that we mentioned earlier. Supergirl decides one day that she feels bad about Superman being lonely, so some fun time travel hijinks ensue, with her trying to hook him up with famous women throughout history. When that fails, she manages to find a superwoman from another planet named Luma Line, because apparently Superman prefers women with names that alliterate with the letter L exclusively. Maybe that's why Maxima just didn't fit the bill for him. Luma and Kal-El are totally smitten with each other, and he even talks about them getting married when she's like, I'll leave my home world for yours. But they realize that she loses her powers if she doesn't have the rays of her own sun reaching her. So they shed a tear and part ways. But what makes this story particularly fascinating, or cringeworthy, or steeped in Silver Age glory really, is the reason why Supergirl had selected Luma for Superman in the first place. It's because she is a Superwoman duplicate of Supergirl, basically an older version of herself, or of Superman's teenage cousin from a different universe. Supergirl gets all mopey over the fact that she failed to find him a marriage, and then Superman gets real creepy about it, grabbing her by the chin, telling her that if he ever did marry, it would be to, I quote, "someone super and lovable like you. We can't marry because we're cousins. Though cousins can marry in certain countries here on Earth, we're both from planet Krypton where the marriage of cousins was unlawful." What the f***, Superman? And finally, in at number one pairing with Superman that isn't weird as f***. Wonder Woman! Ah yes, the most obvious superhero pairing for the penultimate superhero, Wonder Woman and Superman. These two have had an on and on again relationship for a long time running, existing in both the main continuity and alternate timelines in the DC universe. The alternate timeline romances between the two are plenty. In Batman The Dark Knight Strikes Again, Frank Miller's sequel to The Dark Knight Returns, which paled in comparison to the original, in my opinion, features Clark and Diana in the future being an item and having a superpowered daughter named after his mom. In Kingdom Come, after Lois Lane was killed off by the Joker, Superman and Wonder Woman start a family together, with Bruce Wayne hanging out as an adorable old uncle at fam jams. There's even Superman Distant Fires, where we see Clark and Diana send their own son away from a post-apocalyptic Earth to another planet to save him from Earth's inevitable demise. But let's talk about the canon romance the two shared during the New 52 in 2012, when they were officially a couple. It was a big deal. They even got a steamy Justice League cover too. Needless to say, it did not last though. Teardrops.
Number 10. Hawkeye. Well, some may ship these two, and they have had some flirty moments in the Matt Fraction and David Aja Hawkeye series. They have never really been a thing. Still, that doesn't prevent others from dreaming, and you cannot deny that these two characters definitely have chemistry. Of course, their chemistry likely comes from the fact they are just such great friends. In fact, Clint considers Kate to be his best friend. Sorry, Natasha. At one point, Hawkeye and Hawkeye seemingly share a kiss in the 2016 Hawkeye series in issue number 14. At least, that's what the cover teased. In reality, this kiss wasn't between Clint and Kate at all, but rather Clint and Madame Mask, who was in a Kate Bishop clone body at the time. Oh, comics. Despite even the flirty moments that the two shared in the 2012 Hawkeye series, in the letters column it was more implied that there was no intention for there to be anything romantic between these two, and that Kate was not pining for Clint or anything like that, but simply saw him as her mentor, her friend, and someone who she therefore cared very deeply for. Which meant that yes, he could say mean things to her that would hurt and affect her. There's a whole point where he's basically like, look, I don't want to sleep with you, and people were like, oh my goodness, was Kate like hurt by that? Because does she want to sleep with Clint? I don't know how I feel about that. And they were like, I don't think so. Stephen Wacker, who was the assistant editor, I believe, on that book at the time, was like, yeah, that's not what I saw. I saw more of just her being like, ouch, like that's kind of mean to say. That hurts. Even though I don't want to sleep with you. I think it would be weird. I don't ship it. But if you ship it, that's okay. Number 9. Jack. Jack was Kate's one-night stand who appears in the 2016 all-new Hawkeye series in issue number 3. The night before, at the end of issue number 2, Kate and her friend and fellow superhero America Chavez decided to go out dancing as part of an attempt to cheer up Kate and help her forget about Clint after the pair of Hawkeyes had a falling out. Jack is the very nice man that she meets on her night out dancing with America. The two apparently hit it off and end up going back to Kate's apartment. The next morning, Jack is revealed to be a super sweetheart who wants to spend the day with his new paramour and also wakes Kate up with a coffee that he went out to get for her after waking up early and being unable to fall back asleep. What a cutie! Unfortunately for Jack, Kate isn't really in a place to be in a relationship right now, so she turns down Jack's offer. Honestly, I think Kate missed out here. Jack also happens to be wearing a lot of purple, which I think is a design signal that they too could have been just perfect for one another. Oh well. Kate had stuff she needed to work out, and at least she was upfront about that. Although America does later comment that Kate's aversion to attachments is making her sound a lot like the wrong Hawkeye, if you catch her drift. I gotta say, I agree. Being like, I can't have attachments, I'm a hero. It's a very Clint Barton thing to say, I feel like. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more Kate Bishop lists, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Although I don't know if we could do 10 more love interests, because honestly, finding these 10 was pretty tricky, to be honest. Number 8. Miles Morales. In the reality of 1610, Kate Bishop is quite different from her 616 counterpart. Instead of becoming Hawkeye Hawkeye, she is just plain old Katie Bishop. Here she ends up becoming the girlfriend of superhero Spider-Man, aka Miles Morales. In fact, Miles likes her and trusts her so much that he decides to reveal the truth of his secret identity to her. However, this doesn't work out great for him as Katie's parents are actually Hydra agents. Katie ends up telling them what was revealed to her, and when Miles is invited over, they drug and kidnap him, taking him to a place where he is tormented and experimented on. Eventually, Miles escapes their clutches and is saved by the young Ultimates. Despite Katie feeling bad about what happened, their relationship does not survive her ultimate betrayal. Still, for a while, Miles was a love interest of the ultimate version of Catherine Bishop. Number 7. Yukio. Yukio has been both a lover and a friend to Wolverine, as well as acted as the adopted mother of his adopted daughter, Emiko. Yukio first met Wolverine during her time working as an assassin for Clan Yoshida. Initially, she was Wolverine's enemy as she actually worked for the head of the clan, Lord Shinjin, who wanted to shame and kill Logan. Yukio would develop an attraction to Wolverine, but at the time he was basically hung up on Mariko Yoshida, the daughter of Lord Shinjin, so nothing came of it. However, it was because of her feelings for Wolverine that Yukio would ultimately decide to help save Mariko's life later on, despite the fact that Mariko was kinda like her romantic rival for Logan's affections. Yukio is also known for being close friends with Storm and a possibly implied romantic interest of Aurora's as well. At least that's how I see it. I feel like maybe not everybody sees those implications, but I don't know. I think I would ship Storm and Yukio, just like I would also ship Wolverine and Yukio. And just like I would also ship Storm and Wolverine. It's a nice little triangle. Little love triangle there. Number 6. Silver Fox. Silver Fox has become a complicated character since her original story as Wolverine's lover. Silver Fox is a member of the Blackfoot tribe and is Canadian. When Wolverine met her, she had recently been widowed and as such began a relationship with Logan, who had recently been accepted into living with her tribe. Silver Fox, however, would tragically die at the hands of Sabretooth, Wolverine's arch-nemesis, and a vicious man and a vicious mutant. Later on, however, this act would also end up being tied to Romulus, who apparently influenced Sabretooth and did a lot of brainwash shenanigans regarding the memories of her death and who was believed to have been behind it. Wolverine would end up attacking the people of Mount Logan and blaming them for her death because Romulus had him brainwashed to believe that that's what happened, despite Sabretooth having taken credit for killing Silver Fox, and doing so in front of Logan. Silver Fox would also later seemingly return, but it's more likely that this version of her associated with Weapon X, Team X, and Hydra was actually some kind of clone or was an agent who was simply brainwashed and manipulated into thinking that she was the true Silver Fox. Yeah, Silver Fox became really complicated, but she used to be very simple. Number 5. Tiger. One of my favorite of Wolverine's romantic interests has to be Tiger, who is long known as one of the main crime lords of Madripoor. Before that, she was Jessen Hoan, who ended up being kidnapped by the Reavers and later saved by the X-Men. When Jessen learned that Madripoor crime lord Roche was behind the Reavers' attack, which had pretty much completely uprooted and dramatically altered her life moving forward, she dedicated her life to usurping and defeating him, taking up the mantle Tiger, or taking up the name Tiger really. That's how we know her now. Wolverine would later learn of Tiger's true identity as Jessen Hoan and would pledge himself to her cause, eventually working as her personal bodyguard while in his patch persona. During this time, Wolverine would also become a somewhat casual lover to Tiger as the two continued to grow closer together. And I love them together, I just think they're so cute. Number 4. Itsu. Itsu was Wolverine's wife at one point many years ago when he was training with the Master Bando Saburo. The two fell in love, were married, and Itsu even became pregnant with Logan's child. For a brief time they were happy, until Logan accidentally stabbed a fellow member of the community with his claws. As a result, he was forced to leave, exiled, but when he went to say goodbye to Itsu, he only found her dead. Years later, it would be revealed that Bucky Barnes as the Winter Soldier was actually the one responsible for her death, seemingly manipulated into killing her under Romulus's orders. Oh, Romulus, pulling all these strings and then just disappearing. Their unborn child was also stolen from Itsu's womb, and due to the child's mutant gene, which would also grant him a healing factor, survived. This child would grow up to be Akahiro, aka Daken, Wolverine's troublesome son, who was manipulated into thinking his father had killed his mother before abandoning him. And I'll just let you guess who made him believe that. If you can't guess, it was Romulus. Romulus did everything. and also nothing. Number 3. Jean Grey. Despite these two often not ending up together throughout stories told of them across various mediums, the fact remains that Wolverine will likely always carry a torch somewhat for Jeanie. Jean Grey and Wolverine are generally both never in the right place to end up together, and oftentimes their love story, if they do end up having one in whichever canon or narrative that we're talking about here, ends up being tainted with tragedy. The fact remains, however, that both Logan and Jean often count on one another to do what's right, and even turn to one another when they need someone to lean on in a time of need. Even when Jean is dead, Wolverine still has been known to fight for her honor, and when she has been alive, Wolverine has also been the one to kill her more than once. Needless to say, their relationship is way more than complicated. Number 2. Mariko Yoshida. At this point, Mariko has had a long and somewhat convoluted story, but initially in the comics she was simply the daughter of Japanese crime lord Shinjin Harada, who ruled over Clan Yoshida. Mariko would end up meeting Wolverine when the X-Men asked her brother, the mutant Sunfire, for help. While initially kinda scared of Wolverine, eventually the two would fall for one another, both admiring the differences of the other and also sharing a sense of kindness. Mariko would end up forcibly married off by her father and in a relationship where she was pretty badly mistreated. However, she felt compelled to stay in that marriage due to a sense of honor to her family. Eventually, however, Mariko would become free again and would even take over as the leader of Clan Yoshida in her father's place. For a time, her and Wolverine were engaged, with her not wanting to be married until she had removed all the criminal ties from her family. In the end, however, Mariko would die in a criminal gang war before she could end up marrying Logan. Mariko ended up poisoned, and Logan helped her death to be less painful at Mariko's behest by making it a lot more brief. Logan would punish her killer by visiting him every year and slicing off a piece of him until he died. This wouldn't be the end of Mariko's story though, as she would continue to pop up as the forced tormentor of Wolverine in Hell, and later resurrected as Gorgon's Scarlet Samurai. Basically another lover that we just couldn't leave dead, because yeah. I also love when Wolverine comes to Hell and is like, alright, I'll free you though, Mariko, and she's like, nah, I'm good. Just remember me as I was. I don't want to go back. Like what? They could have had a happy ending there. Oh well. Number 1. Storm. Storm has always been a close friend of Wolverine's and is sometimes known for being his romantic partner as well, especially more recently in the comics. Depending on the reality we're talking about, there have also been universes where these two are firmly cemented as a romantic couple. Even in modern comics, with all the history they have shared as teammates, close friends, and romantic interests, these two's chemistry still manages to surface, and even today, they get pretty awesome flirty moments written in for them, like during the Ten of Swords Otherworld tournament when the two faced off in a drinking contest against one another. The best thing about that, too, was that they both held their own and proved they could match each other. That's the thing about Storm and Wolverine. Both are incredibly strong, both as superheroes and as individuals, which is just a small part of why they work so well together. They're very, evenly matched, which I like.
Coming in at number 10, we've got Catwoman, a pairing that's mostly the stuff of fandom for now, but that's gotten enough official hints and references over the years to earn an honorable mention on this list. Catwoman and Poison Ivy both had a penchant for many years to keep up a flirty relationship with the Dark Knight, leading many fans to speculate that the bisexual Poison Ivy could also be interested in her fellow female supervillain. With some flirty back and forths through their history in the comics, alongside a very pointed mind control kiss during the animated film Batman Hush, it's clear that Catwoman and Poison Ivy might just have more in common than a rivalry with the Caped Crusader. Coming in at number 9, we have Darshan Bapna, a more recent character from Poison Ivy's very first limited series in 2016. Forced into becoming a scientist due to large expectations from his family, botany was the area of science that bored Darshan the least, even if his true passion was to be a musician. Darshan first became close with Pamela when the two briefly worked together at the Gotham City Botanical Gardens, with her first becoming interested in him following the revelation that he practices complete nonviolence and won't even eat plants, since he considers them to have a soul. And if we know anything, it's that being kind to plants is kind of the way to Poison Ivy's heart, even if it means an incredibly restrictive diet along the way. Coming in at number 8, we have Dick Grayson, specifically the version portrayed by Chris O'Donnell in the 1997 film Batman and Robin. A highly controversial movie from the 90s, this film saw Poison Ivy, portrayed by Uma Thurman, as arguably the most villainous character in a movie with 3 different villains. Manipulating both Mr. Freeze and Bane to aid in her dirty work, this version of Poison Ivy also directly tries to seduce both Batman and Robin, but winds up being unable to poison the young sidekick because he conveniently had some fake rubber lips made for the occasion. Not quite as ridiculous as a Bat credit card, but hey, at least this ill-advised romance was ended before it could really get going. Coming in at number 7, we have Dr. Marc Legrand. In the very first Bronze Age version of the Poison Ivy character, her origin story was heavily tied to an abusive doctor named Marc Legrand. As a promising young botanist, Pamela was seduced into helping Legrand steal an Egyptian artifact filled with magical herbs. Afraid that Pamela will betray him to the authorities, Legrand later tried to poison his assistant with these very same herbs, unaware that they would instead gift her with a complete immunity to poison and the beginning of her talent for controlling plants. And although Poison Ivy's origin story would be updated and retconned many times over the years, we'll still always remember the original bad guy who learned the hard way not to mess with Poison Ivy. Coming in at number 6, we have the Man of Steel himself, Superman. When your superpower involves mind-controlling people sealed with a kiss, it's understandably going to cause some drama, and that's exactly what happened in the infamous Hush storyline. Needing a heavyweight to protect herself against Batman and Catwoman, Poison Ivy ensnares the most powerful superhero on the planet under her control, and nearly has him kill the Dark Knight. The only reason that Batman is able to survive this battle is due to Superman holding back his strength as much as he can, even if he no longer directly controls his limbs thanks to Poison Ivy's kiss. Eventually, Superman breaks free when he's needed to save Lois Lane, showing that even mind-controlling kisses can't conquer true love. Coming in at number 5, we've got to go with Harvey Dent. One of the best things to ever happen to Poison Ivy as a character was her rise in popularity due to Batman the Animated Series, and her very first episode in that show is a great example as to why. Introduced as the beautiful new girlfriend of District Attorney Harvey Dent before his tragic turn into Two-Face, Harvey Dent soon finds himself in a coma after a particularly deep kiss from Pamela. Pursued by Batman, Pamela reveals herself as Poison Ivy, the latest supervillain in Gotham who seduced and manipulated Harvey Dent in order for revenge at all the flowers he tore up when building a new Gotham City prison. In an ironic twist, this very same prison is where Poison Ivy would end up after her scheme failed and her true colors were revealed. Coming in at number 4, we've got the tragic romance of Poison Ivy and Clayface. While many of the entries on this list so far have featured Ivy manipulating people, the most heartbreaking betrayal of this nature might be the time she made Clayface fall in love with her. While the shape-shifting villain was stuck inside Arkham Asylum, Pamela made him believe they were genuinely in love and married, and Clayface spent much of his time dreaming of seeing his wife again. Unfortunately, Batman would eventually need to let him know the truth, that Poison Ivy was controlling him not just with seduction, but with seeds implanted within his clay body, breaking Clayface's heart with the ultimate betrayal that he wasn't really in love after all. Coming in at number 3, we have the Dark Knight himself, Batman. While Poison Ivy has definitely flirted with the Caped Crusader less often in recent years, in many early Batman adventures, Ivy had her eyes set on the very man trying to stop her schemes. And while there are a few storylines where this attraction was more than one-sided, for the most part, this relationship mostly consisted of Poison Ivy kissing Batman to mind control him and aid in her plant-based plans. Luckily, by this point, Batman usually has several antidotes for each of his villains' various chemicals of choice, but it's still notable just how many times in the past Batman's had his brain wiped by a vine-controlling redhead. Coming in at number 2, we have the Floronic Man. A supervillain connected to the Green, a primordial energy source connected to all plant life on the planet, the Floronic Man fulfills the same role as Marc Legrand did in some version of Pamela's origin story, experimenting on her as his assistant and turning her into a plant-human hybrid similar to himself. In a notable storyline, he almost managed to use some of Poison Ivy's DNA to create the ultimate plant life form between the two of them, but resulted in Pamela changing her mind and allying herself with Batman in order to defeat the plant-based monster with electricity, destroying the villain once and for all, or at least until he was reused as a villain for a new Swamp Thing series. And finally, coming in at our top spot, who else could it be but Harley Quinn? Created for the very same animated series that made Poison Ivy one of Batman's most well-known villains, Harley Quinn has had one of the best character arcs in all of comics, growing from a one-note henchman of the Joker to becoming her own fully fleshed-out character with one of the most popular romances that comic books have ever seen. Harley and Pamela are perfect for one another, as Poison Ivy teaches Harley Quinn how to be her own woman, free from the Joker's abuse, and Harley allows Pamela to connect more with her human side instead of just obsessing over plants. These two better each other in every way, and that's why Harley Quinn's gotta take the top spot on this list.
Number 10, Moreland. Okay, so really this isn't Jessica Drew's Spider-Woman specifically, but it definitely looked like her. On Loomworld, Jessica Drew's doppelganger was actually a lover of the inheritor and villain Moreland. As such, this odd coincidence actually allowed Jessica Drew to infiltrate Loomworld to get valuable intel on the inheritors and the Master Weaver. This intel would help the Spider Army to defeat the inheritors and save the day, making the fact that she was forced to kiss Moreland worth it, I'm sure. I mean, at least I hope it was worth it. Oddly enough, although Jessica was not great at going undercover as her doppelganger, who by all regards was pretty much a big jerky jerk on this world, she still managed to get what she needed, utilizing her pheromones to distract from inconsistencies and prove that all in all, Spider-Woman is actually a really great spy, even when she has no plan and is kind of flying by the seat of her pants. Improvisational spy times. Number 9, Spider-Man. While Jessica Drew's Spider-Woman and Peter Parker's Spider-Man aren't really a match made in heaven in any regards. In fact, at times Jessica finds Peter kinda grating and Peter finds Jessica a bit too intense. Jessica Drew hasn't been the only one to take up the Spider-Woman mantle. For a time, while her powers were inconsistent, after having been lost, returned, and then stolen and slowly recovering them over time, she actually bequeathed the name to another superpowered young woman, Maddie Franklin. Maddie became known for a time as Spider-Woman in Jessica's stead after being granted superpowers of her own. She also ended up becoming enamored with one Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man. At one point, Spider-Man gives Maddie his Spider-Woman CPR, and she uses the opportunity to kiss him. This was during a time when Mary Jane was MIA and believed dead. In fact, that's like the previous issue to this kiss. However, despite MJ possibly being dead, Peter felt super uncomfortable with the romance and ultimately rejected Spider-Woman, even going so far as to have her memory wiped when it came to the truth of his secret identity. He felt that the age difference between them was too great, and also that his secret was too big a burden for someone so young to carry. Plus, he wasn't convinced that Mary Jane was truly dead, holding out hope that she was alive and would somehow be saved in return. Turned out he was right, by the way, that did end up happening. Still, that rejection of young Maddie was pretty harsh. Memory wiped? Woo, ouch. I know she's young, but geez, that would mess me up. I mean, I guess you won't remember it because your mind was wiped, so there's that. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to learn about more Spider-Woman love interests or just Spidey love interests in general, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8, David Ashima. David was Jessica Drew, aka Spider-Woman's landlord, when she was living in San Francisco with her good friend Lindsay McCabe. I love Lindsay. I'm so glad that she's returned in the comics. David and Jessica hit it off and began dating. However, the relationship didn't last, as eventually David Ashima discovered that Jessica Drew was secretly Spider-Woman, also known in San Fran as the Dark Angel of San Francisco. This was all too much for David, and the two ended up calling it quits on their relationship. However, it should be noted that this whole ordeal would not stop David from later asking out Kitty Pryde when some of the X-Men came to visit Jessica.
Number 7, Wonder Woman. Sometimes office romances happen, even with superheroes. That is what happened here. You see, Batman and Wonder Woman are both founding members of the Justice League, and the two of them spend a lot of time together, so it should come as no surprise that they ended up dating just for a little bit. I mean, they even kissed during the Justice League animated cartoon. And there's definitely some flirtation between Bruce and Diana in the DCEU. I mean, we saw it briefly in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, and we didn't really see it in the theatrical release Justice League film. I mean, there were hints of it, but we'll probably see a lot more of it in, the Snyder Cut, or Zack Snyder's Justice League as it's now called. But only time will tell with that one. Number 6, Silver St. Cloud. Silver actually has a really interesting history with Bruce. They both have money, and that's how the two of them met. They started dating, and eventually, she found out Bruce was Batman, which seems to be a trend here. And that is actually why it ended. Silver didn't want to see something bad happen to Bruce. If she was with him, she would always have to worry that, he would never come home at night. And that is something she just didn't want to do. Which automatically makes this different than a lot of other people on the list. I wonder if Silver will end up making her way into Matt Reeves' new Batman trilogy. I mean, he has a lot of other characters coming in, but this one would be, kind of something interesting and new. Number 5, Poison Ivy. So lots of people can't resist Poison Ivy. Partly because she can make men fall in love with her with this spell. And that is exactly what happened with Batman. I mean, can you really see Batman just dating her? They have a completely different view on everything. So it wouldn't really work. I mean, and it's not only Batman she has made fall in love with her. It's also Superman as well. So she can literally make anyone fall in love with her. Unless you have those fake lips on like a Batman and Robin, then you're good. Just everyone get some of those fake lips. Because Batman and Robin teaches us a lot. Number 4, Sasha Bordeaux. Sasha was actually Bruce Wayne's former bodyguard. Yeah, even Bruce Wayne needs a bodyguard, guys. She was actually sentenced to Blackgate after her and Bruce were accused of killing Vesper Fairchild, which they actually didn't. But she ended up finding out who Bruce Wayne was, and the two of them actually trained together on multiple occasions. She wanted to become a vigilante, and she ended up going out with Batman to fight crime. Their relationship didn't really last long, but even when she did go to prison, she never ended up giving Bruce his identity, which instantly shows you just how much she cares for him. Number 3, Vicky Vale. Vicky Vale is one of Batman's oldest relationships. She's also one of the more famous ones because she was the one to make her debut in Tim Burton's 1989 film, Batman, starring Michael Keaton, which was a massive success. Vicky is a reporter that works for the Gotham Gazette. Like many others on this list, they weren't together long, but Vicky holds a special place in a lot of Batman's fans' hearts for being the first one to debut on the big screen. She didn't appear in other movies, but it was a big deal when she first showed up in the film. Number 2, Rachel Dawes. Like Chase Meridian, Rachel was first created for the films. Rachel made her debut in Batman Begins, where she was actually played by Katie Holmes, but then she was recasted in The Dark Knight with Maggie Gyllenhaal, which, is the version that people remember more. Rachel has become one of The Dark Knight's most famous love interests because both films she appeared in are considered to be Batman's best films. And she was a childhood friend of Bruce who found out, eventually he was Batman. But they couldn't be together until the world didn't need Batman anymore. She then went on, started dating Harvey Dent during The Dark Knight, and ultimately chose to be with him before, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, she got killed by the Joker. It was a tragic end to their love story because Bruce was ready to give up everything for her. But Rachel will always remain one of his most famous loves, even though, it was kind of brief and ended really badly. Number 1, Catwoman. Was there ever any doubt? Come on, guys. I think everyone predicted this. I think everyone knew that Selena Kyle was going to be number 1 on this list. Her romance with Batman is famous. The two of them have had an on and off again relationship for such a long time and shared a bond that you just don't see with anyone else. They were going to get married, guys. They were going to get married, but Selena left Bruce at the altar saying that he couldn't be Batman and be happy, so she had to leave, which left fans devastated. Come on! Can Bruce ever catch a break? Probably not. Although, some are still holding out hope that they will be together again, and maybe Bruce will finally be happy. Who knows? But it seems like the writers don't want to take him in that general direction because they just want to keep pushing a mopey Batman, which is still a cool version of Batman, but come on. He could be happy. Bruce can.
And at 10, Tina McGee. Tina McGee was a scientist who worked at Star Labs and a friend of Barry Allen in the 90s television series. Basically, for those of you who watch the current series, she was this show's Caitlin Snow. She helped Barry Allen deal with his super speed powers, eventually by giving him a special suit that was modified into a superhero costume when Barry became the Flash. This version of the character is exclusive to the continuity of the television series The Flash and is an adaptation of Tina McGee. The original character was created by Mike Baron and Jackson Geiss and first appeared in The Flash Volume 2 number 3, and was played by Amanda Pays, who plays Christina McGee on the current CW Flash as well, which I personally think is a great reference. In the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover, however, John Wesley Shipp Jr. reprises his role as Barry Allen from that 90s series once more, as he did in the previous crossover Elseworlds, to bring this character's story to a close. When sacrificing himself on the antimatter cannon's treadmill, it's revealed that this version of Barry went on to marry this version of Tina McGee. And at 9, Linda Park. A tragic tale. An instant before the Flashpoint altered reality, Linda's children, Jay and Irie West, were sucked into the dark multiverse by a tide of dark matter. Wally attempted to save them, but was too late. Dr. Manhattan removed 10 years from the history of DC, which included all of Linda's relationships with Wally and Jay and Irie's birth. Linda's memories of her family were erased while Wally was trapped in the Speed Force. When Wally was able to briefly escape the Speed Force, he tried to get to Linda, his lightning rod, to remember him so that he could permanently escape, but she couldn't and thus was pulled back in. Wally was eventually able to leave the Speed Force for good though, with the help of his mentor and uncle Barry Allen. He reunited with his old friends the Titans, where he found he was able to restore their memories of him with a touch, but that Linda was mysteriously immune to this. And at 8, Emiko Queen. Emiko Emmy Queen is the current Red Arrow, a master archer and a vigilante who runs around wielding a bow. She is the Green Arrow's half-sister and partner, vigilante partner. And she is also the assassin Shadow's daughter. Emiko was born to Robert Queen and Shadow on Starfish Island. However, as a baby, she was kidnapped by her father's protege turned enemy, Simon LaCroix. Not the dude who invented the soda though. Better known as Komodo. LaCroix would train Emiko for years with the Outsiders Arrow clan, leading her to believe that he was her father. After Robin had offered for her to join the team, Emiko agreed to join on the condition that if her team does not convince her, she can leave. The team formed by Robin, Kid Flash, Jin, Roadhouse, and Crush had no training, but Emiko saw potential in them and decided to stay as Robin's right hand. This is where Wally would develop a slight crush on her, despite her having a crush on Nightwing. After their encounter with Deathstroke goes awry though, leading her to kill the assassin, Emiko leaves the team. And at 7, Raven. Raven is the daughter and herald of the demon Trigon and a member of the Teen Titans. The woman later known as Raven was born to the demon Trigon, a demonic entity who had conquered many worlds and fathered many sons. However, this was his first and so far only daughter. Trigon murdered the women who birthed his sons, however he allowed this daughter's mother to live, believing that his daughter needed to be raised by a human in order to help her reshape the underrealms in his image. For some reason. Afraid of what Trigon had in store for their daughter, Raven's mother took her and fled to the dimension of Azarath, which was beyond Trigon's reach, where she named her child Rachel. But over time, the monks of the realm trained Rachel to control her powers and overcome her father's influence. And at 6, Mina Dewan. Mina Dewan was a Star Labs scientist who was struck during the Speed Force storm in Central City, giving her superhuman speed. As Fast Track, she worked with the Flash to train a new generation of speedsters to use their powers at Star Labs. After the Speed Force storm on Central City, Dewan was appointed the director of the new Speed Force testing center in Star Labs. When the Flash and August came to visit, she revealed that she had also been struck by lightning during the Speed Force storm and had gotten similar powers. She started working with the Flash to train a new generation of speedsters. She took on the name of Fast Track, and after talking to the Flash and training the speedster Avery Ho, they ran into Iron Heights to check on 3 speedsters the Flash and August had apprehended. When there, they found August injured on the floor, and the other speedsters slaughtered on the ground, having gotten their speed taken from them. August told them that it was all Godspeed's work. I am the god of speed. Halfway through and at number 5, Jesse Wells. By the way, editor, you don't need to put the dash Wally. That was just for me. In the case of the Arrowverse, Jesse Wells was Jessie Quick, a speedster from Earth 2. She was the daughter of one of the most brilliant scientists, Harrison Wells. A college student on her Earth, Jessie was abducted by Zoom in a plot to turn her father against Team Flash, until being rescued and forced to temporarily relocate to Earth 1. After being hit by a dark matter wave from the Star Labs particle accelerator, Jessie gradually managed to unlock her Speed Force connection, becoming a metahuman speedster and superhero badass. After helping Team Flash defeat Grodd and his guerrilla army, she decided to move to Earth 1 permanently with Wally West, whom she was dating until they broke up. After learning Savitar had plans for her though, Jessie left Earth 1 to take over for Jay Garrick as the Flash of Earth 3, until Barry Allen was destroyed and Jay returned from the Speed Force. Jessie then returned to Earth 2 to continue her heroics and lead on her team. However, her and Wally did end up getting back together, as we see when Wally comes back and Barry realizes who Savitar is in like that same episode. Like he comes back, they ask him, how was Earth 2? Or how was Earth 3? One of the two. They ask him how visiting Jessie was. Then Barry realizes who Savitar Avatar was in one of the later episodes back in season 3. On December 10th, 2019, after Earth-2's destruction in a wave of antimatter, Jessie was soon confirmed to have been killed, along with the rest of Earth-2's population, aside from Laurel Lance of Earth-2. After Oliver Queen's sacrifice to recreate the multiverse, though, it is unknown if she was resurrected. In at 4, Felicity Smoke. After Cyrus Gold stole a centrifuge from Queen Consolidated in order to make more Mirakuru serum for Slade Wilson, Barry extrapolated a logical but unbelievable explanation about the thief being superpowered by merely looking at the crime scene, which ended up being true. Felicity realized that he knew more about the case than they did, and he enlisted his help, telling Barry that Oliver wanted to keep this investigation in-house. During the course of their time together, though, Felicity exhibited signs of being attracted to Barry, though she was still clearly uncomfortable when he mentioned his admiration of the Arrow and his theory that the Vigilante had partners, particularly one versed in computer science. You know, it was her. Barry seemed to like her back, and though he was briefly surprised to learn that Felicity spent her nights with Oliver, even though at the time it was due to them working together as vigilantes, they still kissed after she helped him on a case while he was in the street. But they decided it was better not to date because they were pining after the people they'd eventually marry. Well, they didn't know that they were gonna marry them, but they were still pining after people they couldn't have at the time, so they're like, yeah, no, let's not do this. And at 3, Jessica Cruz. Jessica Cruz inherited the ring of the crime syndicate's power ring, becoming the new power ring briefly before becoming another Green Lantern of Earth. After getting taken over by a Yellow Lantern ring, she was able to fight off the influence, allying herself with the Justice League. The Flash called in Hal Jordan, Earth's first Green Lantern, to teach Jessica how to stay in control of her Yellow Lantern ring. But with Hal's help, Jessica mastered the use of the former ring. When Grail summoned the Black Razor, the new god of death, to kill the Flash, Jessica maintained enough control of her body to jump in the path of the Black Razor and seemingly kill herself to save the Flash. The Black Razor, though, managed to kill the entity in her ring, controlling her, causing her power ring to crumble apart on her finger. For her ability to overcome fear, Jessica was actually tracked down and bestowed a Green Lantern ring, becoming Earth's newest Green Lantern, and recently is one of the more popular love interests of the Flash, with the exception of number 1. But ultimately, in at number 2, Patty Spivot. Patty Spivot in the Arrowverse is a former police detective of the Central City Police Department, formerly an officer and a former member of the Anti-Metahuman Task Force. She is also the daughter of a late unnamed man and the ex-girlfriend of Barry Allen. She is commonly thought to be the best fit for the Grant Gustin Flash, but after Barry and Patty got close, Patty realized that there was something Barry wasn't telling her. After the Turtle kidnapped Patty, Patty decided to leave Central City and go to college at Midway City University to become a CSI, like she always wanted. A few days before she left, Patty discovered that Barry was the Flash by connecting his cases to the fact that he always knew what had happened, like he had been there, and she told Joe about it, who told Barry to talk to her, although Barry was hesitant. Right before she left, though, she visited Barry and told him that if he was the Flash, he should just tell her and then she would stay in Central City to be with him. Though, Barry decided to make a sacrifice and let her go to pursue her dream. Then, because she wanted to prove that Barry was the Flash to herself, she called Barry while she was on the train to school, lying and saying that there was a man with so Barry came running as the Flash, which finally proved to her that she was right. This didn't change her decision to go to college though, as Barry left the train and she stayed on, which eventually led to, in at number 1, Iris West. In the comic books, Iris West Allen is the wife of the second Flash, Barry Allen, and the aunt to the third Flash, Wally West, although in the TV show, Wally and Iris are brother and sister. She is a reporter for the Central City news outlet Picture News, and while she may be the most well-known Barry Allen or Flash love interest, how can we not include one of the most iconic love stories that spans across seemingly every single goddamn timeline? Like, even the one where Barry was literally the villain, like in Reverse Flashpoint during Armageddon Part 4. In the comics though, Iris was born in the 30th century to Eric and Fran Russell, and was sent to the 20th century as an infant, where she was raised by the West family. Although she was never told that she was adopted, she had always suspected it, and because of her curiosity about digging up her origins, she grew up digging for the truth. So she became an award-winning writer for her school newspaper. Then she went to Columbia University and had an internship at the Daily Planet. She needed a break though, so she moved to Central City, where she got a job as a reporter for the Picture News, and after many unsuccessful relationships, she met police scientist Barry Allen while reporting a suspected murder that she was investigating, and then they began to go out. She was charmed by his honesty and stability, and then one night Barry proposed to her while riding on the Ferris wheel at Central City Amusement Park. You gotta admit, Barry, not that original. I mean, like, filling your apartment with like 100 fire hazards like you did in the show, that's better than a Ferris wheel. And I mean, like, singing a custom song that the show had written for a musical episode to propose to her again after she took off the ring because she realized that part of why you proposed was to change her fate with Savitar, that was better.
Number 10, Mystique. Wolverine has been around for a long time, so it's no surprise that this is a love interest I constantly forget about, but that exists. Mystique has of course also been around for a long time, and is possibly even older than Wolverine. So of course at some point in these characters' history, they had to have worked together and of course slept together. When it comes to Wolverine and Mystique, these two actually go way back, all the way back to the Wild Wild West. It was then that Logan and Raven seemingly first met, and even teamed up together. It could have been them against the world, but of course, what usually happens with Raven when it comes to romance also happened during her time with Wolverine. Ultimately, Raven betrayed Logan, putting herself first, and it was because of this that the two ended things, and on a pretty sour note. She also ended things by kicking him out of a moving train car, so yeah. Logan's memory isn't always the greatest, but something that he wouldn't soon forget was how untrustworthy Mystique was. Even to this day, he's like, "You suck, Mystique. Also, you're gonna be lonely because you're always betraying everyone." Number 9, Maureen. She might not be from the main continuity, but Maureen had such a profound and life-changing effect on Old Man Logan that even after she and their children together were tragically murdered by the Hulk gang, Old Man Logan never once forgot about her. He even later asks a returned loved, Mariko, to look out for Maureen, who herself, after more than a lifetime of tragedy and literally going to hell and back, is finally trying to live a normal and peaceful life. Mariko, that is, not Maureen, who is dead in Old Man Logan's timeline. Old Man Logan set aside some money so that Mariko could keep an eye on younger Maureen and ideally try to protect her moving forward, as he knew that if her life continued the way it had in his timeline, it would end in tragedy. He was like, I just love her so much, I just want her to be okay. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want even more Wolverine love interests, I'm pretty sure I could do 10 more. There's a lot of them out there. Be sure to let us know that you love this list by giving it a thumbs up. Can't give it a thumbs down because that doesn't exist anymore, so just thumbs up, please. What a world we live in where we can't dislike things. Number 8, Rose O'Hara. Rose was Wolverine's first love, and for most of his life was seemingly unrequited. In the Marvel Noir universe, she is also one of his main love interests. Rose is probably the reason why Wolverine tends to have a thing for redheads, actually, although that might be a foggier part of his memory and he might not always remember that. Honestly, at this point, I'm surprised that Logan can even remember what day it is or what his phone number is without having it written down somewhere. That's just how much he's had his brain and his memories scrambled. Rose was brought in from town to be a companion to young James Howlett, aka Kid Wolverine, when he was growing up on his parents' estate. Also, just to be clear, he wasn't known as Kid Wolverine, but you know, we know him as Wolverine now, so he was a kid. You know what I'm saying. Rose was also tasked with looking after James, as he was known for being a weak and often sickly child. Rose died tragically when she ended up trying to get involved in a fight between Logan and his childhood rival, who had returned years later, Dog. It was implied then, as she lay dying, that she perhaps also did have feelings for James at some point. Wow, what a time to find that out. Unlike many of Wolverine's other love interests, Rose has not yet returned from the dead. At least, not yet, anyways. Maybe later, who knows. A lot of them do, a lot of them come back to life. Number 7, America Chavez. Just as Clint isn't really a romantic partner of Kate's, the same could be suggested when it comes to a relationship with America, fellow hero and friend. In fact, while Clint thinks of Kate as his best friend, I'd say that Kate has a few best friends personally, including Clint, Cassie Lang, aka Stature, and America Chavez. America tends to be one of the first people that Kate calls when she needs advice or help, whether it be personal or professional. And it goes the same way for America. She usually calls Kate. The two ended up getting to know one another when America got tangled up in the Young Avengers adventures. Since the time they started working together, they have become close friends who both hold a lot of respect for one another. Although Kate is very much straight and America is very much gay, these two still have great chemistry, and if Kate ever did end up wanting to explore her sexuality, I could see America being a great partner for her personally. Still, these two have never been together romantically in the comics, and like Kate and Clint, this is pretty much purely fanship. Possibly my fanship. I really like America and Kate together. Perhaps this is even more fanship too than Hawkeye and Hawkeye, as the two don't really have flirty moments together in the comics, just a strong friendship and bond. And a lot of fun. They have a lot of fun together. But hey, Kate hasn't been around that long, so I needed some more love interest to flush out this list. And I love these two together, so yeah. This is my fanship. Hopefully that's cool with you. Let me know if you also would ship America and Kate if they decided to be a thing. Number 6. Clown. The clown is Kazimierz Kazimierczak, but people just call him Kazi for short. He was an assassin hired to eliminate Clint Barton's Hawkeye for the tracksuit Dracula gang, and other interested parties. A lot of interested parties. A lot of people wanted Clint dead. While this might seem like a strange person for Kate Bishop's Hawkeye to get romantic with, she didn't really know who he was at the time. Both Kazi and Kate were at the same party and ended up talking, enjoying one another's company, and then this led to a little bit of flirting at the end. Though Kate never knew that Kazi was actually an assassin who was employed to take out her partner and friend Clint. The two ended up merely sharing a kiss after talking with one another all night until the party they were both at ended. I will say I also noticed in the Hawkeye series when the clown's MCU counterpart and Kate's MCU counterpart seemed to share a lingering look as Kazi ran away from Kate. I was the only one, I feel like, that was watching that was like, oh, is it gonna be a thing? Is there gonna be a thing? There was no romance, but they did have a look. They did have a look. Number 5. Executioner. Not the executioner that you know from Thor, Scourge, to be clear, but rather Daniel Dubois. Daniel is the son of the villain Princess Python. Kate attempted to mentor Daniel, and the two, who go to school together, attended a charity event as one another's date. However, when the Young Avengers seemingly show up on the scene with a supposed Hawkeye complimenting Kate's dress, Daniel began to wonder if Kate Bishop really was Hawkeye as he suspected. In truth, this other version of Hawkeye was not who they appeared to be, and Kate was the real Kate Bishop Hawkeye, obviously. Executioner is a member of the Young Masters of Evil and is later seen among the ranks of the Masters of Evil, just like Kate growing up, just like the Young Avengers, and they all got Avengers membership as well. I'm assuming they all have little Avengers membership cards. Think if you're on the Avengers, you get a membership card. Number 4. Fuse. Fuse is Johnny Watts, who ended up becoming one of Kate's partners and friends when she started Hawk Investigations. As they worked together and spent more time together, he began to develop feelings for Kate. Things got kinda weird when Madame Mask and a clone body of Kate ended up taking things to a more physical and intimate level with Johnny. However, later on, Kate did admit that she had feelings for Johnny, and likewise, he for her. Eventually, Johnny also revealed that he had superpowers when he was forced to use them to save Kate's life. He would take up the name of Fuse and end up joining Kate when she decided to go help out the West Coast Avengers. However, in her latest series, Hawkeye Kate Bishop, it was revealed that the two decided to break off their romance when Kate decided to head back to New York. Number 3. Speed. Tommy Shepard might currently be with Prodigy in the comics, but he is one of my sweet bye babes, and he's also had a thing with Kate in the past as well. In fact, during their time together on the Young Avengers, the attraction between the two even created some tension, as Kate found herself stuck between Speed and Patriot in a sort of love triangle. Who's she gonna be with? At one point, Speed ended up being her kiss on New Year's Eve when the team celebrated the new year together. There are also alternate realities where these two have even ended up married, although it seems more than likely currently that Prodigy could end up being Speed's endgame, at least in my opinion. Regardless, Kate and Tommy definitely have a strong connection to one another and still remain friends to this day, who care about one another a lot and share a strong bond due to their time together on the Young Avengers team. Number 2. Patriot. Patriot has been an on and off romantic interest of Kate's. He is Elijah Bradley, or Eli Bradley, grandson of Isaiah Bradley, who, yes, we met in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier Disney Plus series in the MCU. Eli initially had super soldier-like powers, which he got through using the mutant hormone growth drug, much to the disappointment of his teammates on the Young Avengers. When they found out about this, they were all pretty worried about him, Kate included. In the end, however, Eli would gain permanent super soldier-like powers after receiving a blood transfusion from his grandfather, who himself was one of the first super soldiers to have been created when the US government and military attempted to recreate Dr. Erskine's formula. Patriot and Hawkeye went on a few awkward dates and shared a kiss when they both found themselves trapped under rubble during siege. Number 1. Novar. Honestly, this was a hard one to pick a number 1 for. I feel like it's a toss-up between the top few spots here, but I went with Novar, so take it or leave it. You let me know what you think about that ranking. Novar, or Marvel Boy, is probably one of the greatest, or at least most prominent loves of Kate's life. The two hooked up and then decided to begin dating, but it didn't end up lasting, as Novar revealed that although he really liked Kate, he would leave her for his ex if he was given a chance to be with her again. Not a great look. He even tried to do so, but then it turned out that that version of his ex, Oubliette, was merely an illusion and not the real one. Kate, of course, did not like learning this and decided to permanently break things off, even when Novar tried to get back together with her. She needed someone who was serious about her and their relationship. Someone who would be committed to her and for whom she wouldn't just be a placeholder. I get it, girl. Still, this hasn't stopped the two from ending up together in alternate realities, and despite how their relationship ended, Kate and Novar have still managed to stay friends.
Number 10. Carol Danvers. While this one never became a tried and true relationship, there was a kind of strange but interesting time that these two went on a date. Now, how did this happen? Well, Spider-Man agreed to do a favor for Carol, but in exchange, blurted out that he wanted a date with her. The date itself is super awkward and terrible, but as such proves to make for a pretty hilarious read. You can check it out in Miss Marvel issue 47. Both Carol and Peter struggle to find anything to talk about over a dinner at a nice restaurant. The dinner is then interrupted by evil Hammer agents who are dealt with before the two finish off the night eating junk food together on a rooftop. It actually ends on a nice note, with the two realizing the awkwardness was likely coming from the fact that they were both too concerned with impressing one another. Other than a few cute and infrequent moments of flirting between the two, this relationship has never really been revisited, but it's safe to say that Carol and Peter will always respect and care for one another, even if they aren't currently getting romantic together. Number 9. Betty Brant. Betty Brant was the secretary of J. Jonah Jameson. She and Peter met through their jobs at the Daily Bugle, and after an incident with Betty where Peter, disguised as Spider-Man, saved her life, he realized that he had feelings for her. They dated for some time, but their relationship ended when Betty suspected that Peter might have feelings for one of his fellow classmates. It turned out that this was all a misunderstanding, but regardless, Betty ended up moving on, dating and eventually marrying Peter's friend and coworker, Ned Leeds, who of course also worked at the Bugle. Despite no longer being together, Betty has always considered Peter one of her best and most reliable friends. Number 8. Carly Cooper. After MJ and Peter's marriage was over and done with, Peter slowly ended up moving on. Carly Cooper was one of the first women he ended up with after MJ and he ended things. Carly was a forensic specialist who ended up going on a few dates with Peter, and eventually, after much humming and hawing, the two ended up as a couple for a time. In fact, it was Mary Jane herself who helped the two get together, making Carly see that what was holding Peter back from committing to their relationship really was himself, and helping Peter to see the same. The relationship didn't last, unfortunately, as Peter's life as a vigilante, as Spider-Man, ended up wedging the two of them apart, and they broke up. Carly has been hot and cold with Peter since then, sometimes his friend and confidant, and sometimes wanting nothing to do with him. Number 7. Silver Sable. These two never really got a chance to explore a relationship, but Silver Sable is definitely a love interest that has become popular with fans. Popular enough that she appeared in the PS4 Spider-Man game DLC content Silver Lining, where sparks between the two characters flew. In the comics, Silver Sable is a well-trained mercenary and owner of the company Silver Sable International. Silver Sablanova is from the small fictional Eastern European country of Simkaria and is known for being an ally of Spider-Man. She is one tough cookie you do not want to mess with. Silver Sable only ever flirted with Spider-Man and then revealed her feelings for him only somewhat when they thought the world was ending. Number 6. Silk. These two instantly had a very magnetic and physical attraction to one another. Spider-Man learned that Cindy Moon was another spider person / spider totem who had been holed up in a bunker for years in order to protect her from the villain Morlun. He freed Cindy from the bunker. I mean, she could have left at any time really, but she didn't because she knew the risk, by giving her the information that Morlun had been defeated. Both immediately had a strong and unexplainable attraction to one another, which could in theory have been caused by the fact that it was revealed that they were both bitten by the same radioactive spider, which granted them their abilities. They had a very physically intimate relationship during their time together due to their off-of-the-charts pheromone attraction to one another, and Silk still remains an ally of Peter's. Number 5. Kitty Pryde. In the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610, a young Kitty and Peter had a budding romance that many fans enjoyed. The two got together after ending relationships with their current partners, Kitty breaking up with Iceman and Peter breaking up with Mary Jane. Most of their time together was spent taking down criminals and as such, Kitty was forced to wear a mask costume to prevent anyone from recognizing her and piecing together Spider-Man's secret identity. These two were super cute together, as both of them are kind of awkward yet charming characters. Like with most of Peter's relationships, his need to protect his secret identity ended up being the force to drive them apart, as this also meant that the two had to keep their romantic relationship secret, lest people somehow use that to figure out that Kitty and Peter were the pair of masked vigilantes. Though in the end, it was Peter getting back with Mary Jane that really put an end to their relationship. Although Kitty never really stopped having feelings for Peter, even after he was dead. Number 4. Spider-Gwen. While Spider-Gwen is obviously not a love interest for Peter Parker, whom this list has mostly been about, she is the main love interest for another famous and popular Spider-Man, Miles Morales. And Spider-Gwen and Miles are so cute together, I just had to include them. Their love for one another is so strong that it crosses universes, with Spider-Gwen being from Earth 65, whereas Miles was originally from Earth 1610. These two met and developed feelings for one another, but decided to stay friends. For now, anyways. Although the two did witness a potential future where they ended up married with superpowered kids on Earth 8. Number 3. Black Cat. Felicia Hardy is one of the fan favorites when it comes to Spider-Man's most famous love interests. Black Cat almost instantly fell for Spider-Man upon him chasing her down. She is sometimes a criminal, sometimes a hero, and sometimes a neutral party in the Marvel-verse. The two have dated and flirted on and off for years, but it's usually Felicia's obsession with Peter's Spider-Man persona, her jealousy, and her sometimes criminal ways that gets between the two. Though the two have also broken up over other things, like when Spider-Man was kind of worried about Black Cat's safety as a non-powered vigilante. This concern actually inspired Felicia to get powers, which she obtained from the shady villain Wilson Fisk, aka Kingpin. Needless to say, she was forced to keep the origins of powers themselves a secret from Peter, while her powers themselves also made her and Spider-Man's relationship more difficult, as it turned out she ended up with bad luck powers, which infected her enemies and those closest to her, which includes Peter Parker. Just her luck. Number 2. Gwen Stacy. Gwen will always be one of the big love interests for Peter because she was one of his first loves, and the one he lost the most dramatically. The loss of Uncle Ben and Gwen Stacy have haunted Peter for years, and often still do haunt him today. Peter Parker's story as Spider-Man is nothing without that loss and that feeling of responsibility. It is what has weighed him down while also inspiring him to be a hero, and it has shaped him into the person he is today. Originally, Gwen and Peter both bonded over their love of science, and she fell for him. The death of her father caused a rift in their relationship as Gwen blamed Spider-Man, not knowing that Peter himself was Spider-Man, while also resenting Peter for being so absent around her time of mourning, because, he was Spider-Man, so he was off doing Spider-Man stuff. Peter had promised her father right before he died to protect Gwen, and yet, while trying to save her, she died. The fateful panel where he manages to secure her falling body with his webbing is often pointed to when it comes to why Spider-Man blames himself. Whether or not she was dead before Spider-Man managed to grab her, that fateful snap of her neck will always haunt him and readers. Gwen represents for Peter what could have been. She will always make him wonder, inspire him to be better, and he will always love her. Number 1. Mary Jane. While Mary Jane may have initially lost out with Peter to Gwen when Peter and MJ were in that school year love triangle, Mary Jane was the character left standing at the very end, and as such, ended up with Peter. But really, what keeps these two so close is more than that. More than just that convenience. Not only is Mary Jane stunning, but she is kind, empathetic, and really seems to understand Peter in a way no one else does. Sure, she can't always be with him because understanding someone doesn't mean you can always stand them, but the two are usually guaranteed to always get back together. Mary Jane will always be there for Peter and proud to know him, and he'll always admire her boldness and her commitment to do what's right. Both will always love one another and, in a way, be one another's heroes.
Number 10. Barbara Gordon. So this one has a weird and complicated history with fans. You see, it all started during Batman Beyond, which is an amazing animated series. If you haven't seen it, watch that right now. It was hinted that Bruce and Barbara, aka Batgirl, had a romantic past. Fans really didn't know how to think about that, but they just kind of let it slide, because what else? But didn't stop there. In the animated film adaptation of the comic book The Killing Joke, the two took their relationship to the next level. Now, a lot of fans just attribute this relationship to Bruce Timm, who was the creator of the whole, DCAU, DC Animated Universe, and he was a producer on the Killing Joke animated film. For some reason, he just really wanted to see those characters together. Regardless, I just don't think that this is a relationship that fans will ever really get on board with. But it had to be on the list. Number 9, Chase Meridian. Chase is a psychologist and was introduced in the film Batman Forever. She was played by Nicole Kidman when Val Kilmer was Batman. Now, regardless of what you think of this film, one of the things that everyone agrees on is that they really enjoyed Chase. She had a really interesting and complex relationship with both Bruce and Batman. She eventually figured out, that the two were the same person. She only appeared in one film, but in 2013 she did make her debut in the comics. It would have been interesting to see where they would have taken her as a character and her relationship with Bruce, but unfortunately that never ended up happening. Batman and Robin ended up happening, and we all know how that turned out. Number 8, Talia al Ghul. This is probably one of the more complex relationships of Batman's career, if you could even call it a relationship at all. So Batman has never trusted the League of Assassins. That's not, new information. But he has tried to work with Talia from time to time. But the thing is, Talia wanted a kid. In her eyes, a kid with Batman would be the perfect combination. They ended up having a kid together, Damian Wayne. Although it's kind of implied that she drugged Batman and that's how Damian happened. I think all fans agree that this is definitely not one of Bruce's healthiest relationships.
Number 7, Shroud. Shroud was the love interest of Julia Carpenter's Spider-Woman. While this Spider-Woman was also married at one point, her husband and her ended up getting divorced, with him getting custody of their daughter, Rachel, due to Julia's unexplained absences as a result of her secret life as the hero, Spider-Woman. The Shroud and Spider-Woman would fall in love when he helped her after she had lost her powers. It was Shroud who helped restore them and also helped Julia to recover from being paralyzed with physical therapy. Unfortunately, the romance wouldn't last, but even after they broke up, the Shroud refused to let Julia go and began stalking her in an attempt to get back together with her because he believed it would help him, fix his life. Yeah, that didn't end well. Julia was like, don't stalk me. Stop that. I'm gonna lay a trap for you. Number 6, Captain Marvel. Carol is really just Jessica Drew's best friend forever, but despite them being the facts, there are still a ton of people who ship these two together as more than friends. The chemistry between Jessica Drew and Carol Danvers is really great, which is what makes it easy to accept that they are the best of friends, but some see that there could be more to these two than just a very close friendship. And I cannot deny myself, if either of these women decided that they wanted to date women, they would actually be seemingly pretty perfectly matched for each other. There are times when Carol and Jessica in the comics even sound like an old bickering married couple, and then there are other times where they're so kind, considerate, loving, and loyal to each other that you could believe that they were like divine soulmates. So although this is a ship that isn't completely real or anything, I gotta say, I kinda like it. I kinda like it as a ship, which is why I included it. So if you ship those two as more than friends, that's alright. I stand by it. Put it in your fanfics. Number 5, Jerry Hunt. Jerry Hunt was an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. who stumbled upon Jessica Drew's Spider-Woman when she was using her powers as a thief, just trying to survive and get by. Or well, she tried to be a thief briefly and then she was like, actually I shouldn't do this. I'll just be a hero instead, even though that doesn't pay anything. Oh boy, how am I gonna eat food? Coming across her path, Jerry managed to unmask Spider-Woman and found her appearance to be familiar. After he was injured, Jessica saved his life, and as he lay recovering at the end of that very first issue of Spider-Woman from the 1970s, he claimed that for whatever reason, he wanted that woman. He wasn't sure if he wanted to catch her or he wanted to love her, but boy oh boy did he want her. Jerry would later recall where he'd seen Jessica before in S.H.I.E.L.D. files where he saw her back in her Hydra days. Eventually, Jerry would end up finding Spider-Woman again, and for a time the two would even date. Jerry would also become an ally to Spider-Woman, helping her fight against villains and even trying to help her learn more about her own mysterious past. In the end, they would decide to break up when Jerry had to go back to London for work. Jess, you see, would rather stay put, and so that was the end of their romance. Number 4, Norman Osborn. For the daughter of Spider-Man, Spider-Woman May Mayday Parker, she'd actually end up falling in love with the descendant of a rival family, the Osborns. It's like a Romeo and Juliet love story. I mean, maybe the Osbournes also isn't a rival family, but they're at least a complicated family in regards to their relation to the Parkers, truth be told. There were both good and awful memories there. Normie Osborn, Norman Osborn's grandson and Harry Osborn's son, became May's friend and ally after she saw the tragedy in him when he was Green Goblin and actually helped to reform him. He would end up married to another reformed villain and ally, Brenda Drago, the daughter of the second Vulture. However, before that came to pass, May revealed that she had feelings for Normie. Although he rejected her, citing their 4-year age difference and the fact that her father would freak as reasons, it was later revealed that Normie actually did have feelings for May when we saw into his comatose visions where Normie was haunted by his grandfather, Norman Osborn, who hounded him for falling in love with the girl. Also, Normie did really like May, but they couldn't be together. It wasn't meant to be. Number 3, Hawkeye. Jessica Drew's Spider-Woman and Clint Barton's Hawkeye ended up getting together as a result of their time on the Avengers. They both developed feelings for one another and decided to start dating. However, due to some misinterpretation of the boundaries of that relationship, the two ended up calling it quits. Clint thought that he and Jess were keeping things casual, and he ended up having a one-night stand with somebody else outside of the relationship, which Jessica was not happy about when she found out, because she thought things were more serious between them and more monogamous. It also ended on a not so great note, as Jess, upset and hurt, lashed out by physically hitting Clint. Also, let's remember that Jess does have super strength, though I'm sure she wasn't using it there, but still, that makes this moment like even more worse in my mind. Both Clint and Jess made mistakes when it came to the whole situation between them, but fortunately, they were eventually able to move on and become friends again, though awkward moments still arise between the two as a result of this relationship. Number 2, Spider-Man. Obviously, we are once again switching up Spider-Womans for a moment. Although Gwen Stacy of Verse 65 is now known as Ghost Spider, there was a time when she too went by Spider-Woman. She has been known as Spider-Gwen most prominently from a reader standpoint, but within the narrative, Spider-Woman and Ghost Spider are more common names for that character. This alternate version of 616's Gwen Stacy ends up falling in love with a different Spider-Man other than Peter Parker. She is more known for her relationship with and love of Earth 1610's Miles Morales, aka Spider-Man. In fact, there is even an alternate future where these two end up together, settle down, and they have kids. In that reality, they are both heroes and also kind of celebrities because of their heroics. Number 1, Porcupine. Roger Gawking is a fan favorite when it comes to Jessica Drew's romances. He was once the villain Porcupine who ended up becoming involved in a case that Jessica was investigating as a PI. The spouses, paramours, and villains had been kidnapped and were being kept safe in exchange for ransom money that the villains were forced to pay. When Jessica went to investigate, she found a community of villains' loved ones who were essentially pretending they had been kidnapped in exchange for money, as many of them were victims of abuse at the hands of said villains. In the end, Jessica helped to resolve this conflict while still protecting the community of victims. Roger would go on to become an ally and friend to Jess, and also act as her babysitter after her son Jerry was born. Eventually, it would be revealed that Roger had feelings for Jess, and after believing he'd been killed only to find out he'd actually survived, the two shared a kiss, with Jess confirming that she also had feelings for Roger. More recently in the comics, Jess's busy heroic life, as well as her inability to see Roger as her equal, caused the two of them to break things off. Or more specifically, Roger to dump Jessica. I gotta say though, I kinda get it. I feel like Jessica did not have a lot of time for Roger. Poor Roger. Hopefully they can get back together, maybe? Again, maybe? I'm not caught up with my Spider-Woman right now, so if they're back together, please don't tell me. I don't want any spoilers. A few issues behind, friends.